The Destruction of the Taint on Sensual Desire by Venerable Rungruan Papasaro, Dr. Rungruan Lim Chu Patapa. The problem statement: what is the taint on sensual desire? The taint on sensual pleasure, when a stimulus makes a contact, then causing a feeling. And due to an uninstructed cognition to the world, then regarding feeling as self, or self as in feeling, that is, the mind is struggling with craving for existence. And in the case, when the feeling is a kind of a happy feeling, then the mind is struggling with craving for sensual pleasure with desire and lust. On the other hand, if the feeling is painful, then the mind is struggling with craving for extermination. The taint on sensual pleasure is deeply rooted from the craving in the process of dependent origination. And no matter whatever kind of stimulus arrives from the world, then arising a craving immediately, as explained by the Venerable Rahapla as follows.
Life in any world is incomplete and satiate, the slave of craving, and when I knew, saw, and heard this, I went forth from the household life into homelessness.
The root cause analysis: the taint on sensual desire is rooted from the craving in the process of dependent origination. When stimulus from the world makes a contact, then human being has 6 sense bases as channels to receive stimulus from the world. In the process of dependent origination, dependent on 6 sense bases arises a contact, and dependent on contact arises feeling. In SN 22:82, the Buddha explained as follows.
When stimulus from the world makes a contact through the 6 sense bases, a person with an uninstructed cognition, the mind will respond with bodily feeling first, and then after assuming a self to be involved with the stimulus by having a second feeling on mental feeling, while a noble disciple with instructed insight will have only the bodily feeling, but no mental feeling.
Clearly, an uninstructed cognition assumes craving for existence with an assumption of a self to be involved with the world, then having mental feeling in such a way that if the feeling is happy, then the mind will struggle with craving for sensual pleasure. However, if the feeling is painful, the mind will struggle with craving for extermination. Therefore, we can conclude that craving is the root cause of the taint on sensual desire, and in order to destruct the taint on sensual desire, we have to cease all the 3 kinds of craving in the process of dependent origination. The objective: the cessation of craving, namely craving for existence, craving for sensual pleasure, and craving for extermination. The action plans: the Buddha outlined the practice for the cessation of craving as follows.
In performing the Buddhist practice, the mind will make the progressive steps of development as follows. Dependent on Yoniso Manasikara as the root cause, arises gladness. Dependent on gladness arises rapture. Dependent on rapture arises bodily and mind relaxations. Dependent on bodily and mind relaxations arises happiness. Dependent on happiness arises concentration, one-pointedness. Dependent on concentration arises insight. Dependent on insight arises disenchantment. Dependent on disenchantment arises dispassionateness. Dependent on dispassionateness arises liberation.
The Dharma for the cessation: the kind of craving for existence by having a perception of no self, having a perception of emptiness. The Dharma for the cessation: the kind of craving for sensual pleasure by disenchantment to the world, dispassion to the world. The Dharma for the cessation: the kind of craving for extermination by compassion to others. The Buddha explained on the way for the cessation of craving in several suttas as follows.
Monks, when the instructed noble disciple experiences a painful feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve, or lament. He does not weep beating his breast and become distraught. He feels one feeling, a bodily one, not a mental one. Suppose they were to strike a man with a dart, but they would not strike him immediately afterward with a second dart, so that the man would feel a feeling caused by one dart only. So too, When the instructed noble disciple experiences a painful feeling, he feels one feeling, a bodily one, and not a mental one. While experiencing that same painful feeling, he harbors no aversion toward it. Since he harbors no aversion toward painful feeling, the underlying tendency to aversion toward painful feeling does not lie behind this. While experiencing painful feeling, he does not seek delight in sensual pleasure. For what reason? Because the instructed noble disciple knows of an escape from painful feeling other than sensual pleasure. Since he does not seek delight in sensual pleasure, the underlying tendency to lust for pleasant feeling does not lie behind this. He understands as it really is the origin and the passing away, the gratification, the danger, and the escape in the case of these feelings. Since he understands these things, the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling does not lie behind this. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. This, monks, is called a noble disciple who is detached from birth, aging, and death, who is detached from sorrow, lamentation, pain, dejection, and despair, who is detached from suffering, I say. This, monks, is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the instructed noble disciple and the uninstructed world person.